You're not going to announce this to anyone. No goodbye post, no new chapter caption, no explaining yourself to people who never earned an explanation in the first place. Because the moment you announce a change, you hand it to the room. They get to react to it, question it, talk you out of it, congratulate you before you've even done the work. The Stoics knew something almost nobody practices today. The most powerful moves you make in life are the ones nobody sees you make. Today, 10 things the Stoics removed from their lives. Quietly, permanently, without a word to anyone. Not one social post. Not one dramatic speech. Just a door closing softly. Somewhere no one was watching. Do even 3 of these, and people will feel the shift in you before they can explain why. They'll say you seem different, calmer, harder to read. They won't know. It's because you stopped giving them access to the parts of you that used to leak out everywhere. Number 10 is the one that ends the most relationships. People were secretly begging to end for years and never had the courage to name out loud. Epictetus was born a slave. He owned nothing. Not his body, not his time, not even his own leg after his master broke it in a fit of temper just to see if he would cry out. He didn't. And yet by the time he died, free men, senators, even future emperors traveled to sit at his feet and learn from him. How does an owned man end up owning himself more completely than the men who owned him? He didn't fight for more freedom in the ways people usually chase it. He removed what didn't serve him, starting with the need to explain his choices to people who had no right to an explanation in the first place. A slave who explains himself to his master is still a slave. A free man doesn't explain. He simply lives and lets the living speak for itself. That's where we start. You're at a family dinner. The plates are still half full. Someone's refilling wine they don't need. And somebody across the table asks, in that tone that pretends to be casual but isn't, why you skipped the reunion this year. You feel the old pull instantly. The urge to build a case. Work was insane. The flights were expensive. You had a thing. You start listing reasons before you've even decided if you owe this person a single word. That pull is the trap. Most people think justifying themselves is politeness. It isn't. It's a transfer of power executed in real time at your own expense. At the second you explain, you've quietly told the whole room that your choices are on trial, and they're the appointed jury. You've made yourself accountable to people who were never going to walk a single day in the decisions they're now judging over dessert. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire through war and plague, buried children, fought off betrayal from men he trusted, and he still wrote this to himself in a journal he never intended anyone else to read. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Read that again, slowly. He wasn't boasting about wisdom he'd already mastered. He was catching himself in the same trap, in real time, and writing himself a warning. Stoics quietly stopped explaining. Not rudely, not with a slammed door or a cold shoulder. Just a short answer, warmly delivered, and then nothing more. That didn't work for me this year. Full stop. No further filing. No supporting evidence. No closing argument. The sentence stands alone, and you let it. Watch what happens the next time someone pushes for more. You say your one sentence. You smile, genuinely, because you're not performing anger. You're just done talking about it. You change the subject to something that actually interests you. The silence that follows your short answer isn't awkward for you. It's theirs to sit in, not yours to fill. Most people, faced with that silence, will fill it themselves eventually, usually by dropping the subject entirely. People stop asking eventually, not because they respect you less for it, because they sense, somewhere below language, that there's nothing left to pull on. The rope you used to hand them, the one they could tug and tug until you unraveled into a full explanation, simply isn't there anymore. And a man who can't be unraveled becomes, without ever trying, someone people stop testing. Think about the people in your life who never explain themselves, the ones you already know. Notice how you never actually doubt them more for it. If anything, the opposite happens. Their silence reads as certainty. Meanwhile, the person who over-explains every decision, who provides receipts nobody asked for, ends up looking less sure of himself with every additional sentence, even when his reasons were perfectly good. Explanation, past a certain point, doesn't build trust. It quietly erodes it. You had a rough week. Somebody wronged you, badly, and it's sitting in your chest like a stone. The old move, the one everyone defaults to, is to tell everyone. The group chat lights up, the coworker gets the whole story at lunch, anyone who'll nod along gets recruited into your corner. It feels like relief in the moment. It's actually a leak, slow and steady, draining something you're going to need later. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius about exactly this, that some griefs, spoken aloud too many times, stop being felt and start being performed instead. You've seen this happen in other people, probably without naming it. The friend who's told the same betrayal story so many times at so many dinners that it's stopped being a wound and become a party trick, a bit, something they do now instead of something that happened to them. The retelling doesn't heal it. It embalms it, preserves it exactly as it was, forever fresh, forever available for the next audience. Stoics still feel the pain. Make no mistake. They are not stone, but they quietly stop handing it out for public reaction because every audience member who hears your story adds their own opinion to your wound, what you should have done differently, what they would have done in your position, how they always knew that person was trouble. And piece by piece, the pain that started as entirely yours becomes a group project you didn't sign up to manage. The quiet move is smaller than people expect. One trusted person, maybe, told once, thoroughly, and then the door closes on the retelling. You process the rest of it, walking alone, training until your legs shake, writing pages nobody will ever read, in places where no one else's reaction can shape how you're supposed to feel about what happened to you. People will notice you stopped bringing your problems to the table the way you used to. Some of them will worry or ask if you're okay, or take the silence personally. Let them wonder. You're not withholding out of coldness. You're finally keeping something that was always, from the very beginning, supposed to be yours, alone, to carry. There's a version of this that surprises people the most. The pain, kept quiet, actually resolves faster. Not because silence is magic, but because you stop reliving it fresh every time you tell it to someone new. Each retelling used to reset the wound to day one. Once the retelling stops, the wound is finally allowed to do what wounds actually do, which is heal, slowly, on its own schedule, without an audience checking in on its progress. Somebody in the room is louder than you tonight. Funnier, in that easy way, that makes a whole table lean in. Getting the laughs, the eye contact, the energy you used to chase, without even noticing you were chasing it. The old instinct kicks in fast. Compete. Get louder back. Find an angle to steer the story toward yourself. Top the last joke. reclaim the room's attention like it's a resource running out. Epictetus drew a hard line. Most people go their whole lives without learning to see clearly. Some things are within your power, and almost everything else is not. Whether a room finds you interesting tonight is not within your power. Whether you show up as exactly yourself, undiminished by their attention or their total lack of it, is the only lever you actually hold in your hand. Stoics quietly stopped performing for rooms that were never going to fully see them anyway, no matter how hard they performed. Not by disappearing, not by sulking in a corner, by simply, calmly, no longer competing for a prize that was never worth what it cost to win it. They speak when they have something worth saying. They stay quiet, genuinely quiet, not sullen when they don't. The quiet isn't insecurity dressed up as composure. It reads, eventually, unmistakably, as the exact opposite. Try it once, deliberately, as an experiment on yourself. Sit in a loud room and add nothing you don't fully mean. Don't perform silence either. Just don't manufacture noise. Watch, over the course of the evening, how many people end up drifting toward the one person in the room who isn't performing. Silence, held without apology and without resentment, is a magnet nobody ever warns you about, because nobody who's mastered it feels the need to advertise the fact. Somewhere in your head, there's a ledger, and you know exactly where it's kept, even if you've never written it down. Who called last? Who owes an apology they never gave? Who did you a favor 3 years ago that was never, not once, returned in kind? That ledger feels like fairness, like basic bookkeeping, like simply keeping track of a world that owes you something. It's actually a cage you built with your own hands and then quietly locked yourself inside, keeping the only key. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly, almost obsessively in page after page. The temptation to catalog other people's faults instead of tending to your own conduct, your own garden, the only plot of land you actually control. He said the mind that spends its hours keeping score of others has no hours left over to master itself. Stoics quietly closed the ledger. And this is not the same as pretending people were fair to you when they weren't. It means recognizing that carrying a running tally of every debt owed to you means you are perpetually, exhaustingly waiting for a payment that may never arrive, from people who may not even remember incurring the debt. That's not patience dressed up as virtue. That's a slow-burning resentment factory you built yourself, and you're the one paying the electric bill every single day it runs. Closing the ledger doesn't mean you forget who's trustworthy and who isn't. You still know. You still act on it. It means you stop needing the world to settle its accounts before you're willing to feel at peace. You act well because acting well is who you are, not because you're owed something for it. You expect nothing back. And the strange, almost paradoxical result is that you start noticing kindness again. Real kindness, small and unasked for, because you're no longer too busy measuring everything against a debt column to see it. There's a particular kind of freedom in this that's hard to describe until you've felt it. The ledger keeper is always, quietly, waiting for the call to be returned, the favor to come back around, the apology to finally land. That waiting is a low hum of dissatisfaction running underneath an entire life, so constant you stop noticing it's there. The moment the ledger closes, the hum stops. You're simply present in your relationships, giving what you give because you chose to give it, not running a silent audit in the background of every interaction. Pause this video for a second, right now, and actually think of an answer. Think of the last time you fired back instantly. A text sent in under 10 seconds, a comment posted before you'd finished reading the one that provoked it, a comeback in a meeting that got a laugh from the room, and a knot in your stomach an hour later. Every single person watching this has that memory sitting somewhere close to the surface. That's exactly the point. This is the item most men fail over and over for their entire lives, and it's the hinge the whole rest of this video swings on. Seneca's rule here was simple and brutal in its simplicity. The greatest remedy for anger is delay, not suppression, which just buries the anger alive where it festers. Delay. He said that if you postpone your reaction even briefly, even by a handful of seconds, most anger simply cannot survive the wait. It needs your immediate cooperation to become action, and if you withhold that cooperation for even a moment, it starts to lose its grip. Stoics quietly stop responding in real time, as a fixed habit, not an occasional discipline they reach for on their best days. Somebody sends the provoking message, the one clearly engineered to get an instant reaction. They let it sit, unanswered, on the screen. Somebody says the cutting thing out loud in the room, aimed right at them. They let 3 full seconds of silence pass before opening their mouth at all. Not for effect, not as some manipulative power move. Because the version of them that speaks after 3 real seconds of delay is a different, steadier, more accurate man than the one who would have spoken at the 0 mark, running purely on reflex. Nobody watching sees this discipline happen. There's no announcement, no visible internal struggle written across their face, no dramatic pause for effect. Just a slightly longer beat before the reply than you'd expect, and a reply that, every single time, without exception, is better than the one that almost came out first. Some people only appear in your life when things are already bad, and if you're honest with yourself right now, you can probably name one immediately. The friend who resurfaces at the funeral, but was nowhere to be found at the birthday. The relative who calls the moment the diagnosis comes in, but never once during the long, unremarkable years of good health that came before it. The old instinct is gratitude, pure and automatic. At least they came. At least they showed up when it mattered most. The Stoic move underneath that instinct is quieter and considerably colder. Notice the pattern precisely and adjust your expectations of that person permanently without ever staging a confrontation about it. Epictetus taught that we suffer most, far more, than we suffer from actual events, from our false expectation of other people's presence in our lives. You don't need to cut this person off, don't need a dramatic scene or a final conversation. You simply, quietly, stop reserving a seat for them at the table of people you actually rely on when things get hard. This particular removal is completely invisible from the outside, which is exactly the point. You still answer their calls when they come. You're still civil, even genuinely warm in the moment. But internally, in the private ledger that only you can see, the emergency-only friend has been quietly reclassified, permanently, and the energy you used to spend, hoping they'd show up more consistently, gets redirected without ceremony toward the 2 or 3 people who already, reliably, do. This isn't bitterness, even though it can look like bitterness from the outside if someone were watching closely. Bitterness wants the other person to know they've been recategorized, wants them to feel the sting of it. This is the opposite. It's simply accuracy. You're not punishing anyone. You're just finally seeing the shape of a relationship for what it's always actually been instead of what you kept hoping, against the evidence it might someday become. You make a decision, a real one, carefully considered. Someone misreads your motives completely, assumes the worst, tells a version of the story that makes you look small, or selfish, or cruel. The old pull is desperate, and immediate. Correct them right now, clarify every detail, make absolutely sure they see you the way you see yourself, because the gap between their version and the truth feels unbearable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, with real finality, that it is not other people's job to see us clearly, and that chasing that vision from them is a thirst that can genuinely never be satisfied, because you cannot control a mind that isn't yours, no matter how much evidence you produce or how patiently you explain. Stoics quietly release the need to be understood by absolutely everyone they encounter. They accept, as a basic fact of existence, that some people will always carry the wrong story about them, permanently, regardless of what's actually true. And they accept that correcting every single wrong story that circulates is a full-time, unpaid job, with no end date and no possibility of ever being finished. This doesn't make you distant or resigned. It makes you finally fully available to the small number of people who already do understand you, instead of perpetually exhausted from performing clarity for an audience that was never going to get it right, no matter what you said. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that only comes from being misunderstood by someone who matters to you, and a completely different, lighter feeling that comes from being misunderstood by someone who doesn't. The Stoic move isn't pretending both feel the same. It's getting ruthlessly honest about which category a given person actually falls into, and stopping the expensive work of chasing clarity from people who were always in the second group, no matter how much it once felt like they should be in the first. Someone your age has more, visibly, undeniably. The house that's paid off, the title on the door, the relationship that looks effortless from the outside looking in, the old habit, so automatic you barely notice you're doing it, is to measure yourself against their timeline and come up quietly, privately, short. Seneca called this one of the surest paths to an entirely wasted life. Living by another man's clock instead of your own. He watched senators in Rome burn through decades chasing a rank someone else had already reached years earlier, as if there were only one correct order in which a life was permitted to unfold, one master schedule everyone was secretly failing to keep pace with. Stoics quietly stopped checking the scoreboard against other people's chapters, and this isn't denial. It isn't pretending the differences don't exist. It's precision. Your only honest comparison, the only one that actually contains useful information, is who you were exactly a year ago. Every other comparison you could possibly run is measuring a marathon against someone else's sprint, run on a completely different road, in different weather, toward a different finish line, that you, standing where you're standing, cannot even see the shape of. The quiet version of this looks almost boring from the outside. No dramatic renunciation of ambition, no speech about running your own race. Just a small private redirection of attention, day after day, away from other people's timelines, and back onto the only timeline you actually have any power over. Nobody applauds this. Nobody even notices it happening. It's simply the slow accumulation of attention spent, where it can actually do something, instead of spent on a scoreboard you are never going to control. You start working out seriously this time. You start actually saving money instead of talking about saving money. You start healing from something that's been sitting heavy in you for years. The instinct, almost universal, is to tell everyone. Partly for accountability, sure, but mostly, if you're honest, because the recognition feels good before the results have even had time to arrive. The Stoics distrusted this particular instinct sharply, almost suspiciously. Epictetus said that if you genuinely want to improve, you have to be content, at least for a while, to be thought foolish and a little stupid by the people around you regarding your outward affairs. Meaning, let the results speak for themselves, eventually in their own time, without a press release accompanying every step along the way. Announced growth invites an audience with opinions on your progress, whether you asked for those opinions or not. It invites doubt when you have a bad week, comparison when someone else seems to be improving faster, the slow, almost unnoticeable erosion of genuine motivation into pure performance for an audience. Quiet growth, by contrast, has no audience to disappoint, no public timeline to defend, and no early praise to accidentally coast on before the actual work is anywhere near finished. Stoics let the people around them notice the change on their own whenever they happen to notice it. They almost never narrate the change in advance. And here it is, the one most men have been quietly avoiding for the entire length of this video, because somewhere in the back of your mind, you already know exactly which relationship this item is describing. Some relationships only run on performance, and you can feel it the moment you're honest with yourself about it. You being endlessly agreeable, funny on command, useful whenever called upon, available at a moment's notice, never once inconvenient. The moment you stop performing that role, even slightly, the relationship reveals with total clarity exactly what it actually was underneath the performance. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should test our relationships exactly this way, deliberately. Remove the performance entirely and see with clear eyes what actually remains standing. If nothing remains once the performance stops, then it was never truly a relationship to begin with. It was an audience the whole time that you were paying for with your own energy, month after month, year after year. Stoics quietly stopped performing for people who only ever wanted the show and never wanted the man underneath it. No dramatic confrontation, no speech, no dramatic exit scene. Just less energy sent in that direction than before. No explanation offered because none is owed. And a quiet, steady redirection of that same energy toward whoever actually showed up, consistently, when there was nothing left to perform for. This is the one item on this list that changes a life. Not because it's dramatic, because it explicitly isn't. Because it's the quietest ending of all 10, and the people who genuinely deserved you were never even in that particular room to begin with. You'll know this one is working when the relief arrives before the sadness does. Most people expect grief first when a performance-based connection fades, and brace for it. What actually comes first, more often than anyone admits, is a kind of exhale, the specific exhaustion of being watched, evaluated, expected to deliver, finally lifting. The sadness, if it comes at all, comes later and smaller than you feared. What replaces it is room. Room for the people who were never asking you to perform anything at all. None of this required a single announcement, from the very first item to the very last. That's the entire lesson hiding quietly inside all 10 of these. Power that has to be announced out loud was never fully yours to begin with. The version of you that removes what doesn't serve him, quietly, without asking anyone's permission, without staging a farewell speech for an audience that was never entitled to one, is the version of you that nobody can successfully argue with. Because there was never a debate to begin with. You simply changed, and one day they noticed. You don't owe the room a before and after. You never did. You just get to walk through the door. If this reached you, subscribe. Next video breaks down the exact words to use on the one occasion someone actually does deserve an answer from you.